In 2026, cosmic ray detectors aimed beneath Solomon's temple and found a sealed chamber, not collapsed, not buried by time, deliberately sealed by human hands, 586 BC. Babylon is at the gates, Jerusalem is burning, the priests are running, and the Ark of the Covenant vanishes. No body, no trace, no explanation. For 2,600 years, history called it a mystery. But the Bible never did. 2 Kings 23, Jeremiah 3. The Dead Sea Scrolls, 3 sources, 1 truth. The Ark wasn't stolen, it was hidden before the enemy ever arrived. Ethiopian tradition says it's in Axum. The Talmud says it's beneath Jerusalem itself. And now, ground-penetrating radar has found a sealed room directly below where the Ark once stood. This isn't science discovering something new. This is science finally catching up to what Scripture declared 2,600 years ago. I will dwell where I have chosen. 2 Chronicles 6:6. The Ark was never lost. It was waiting for this exact moment, but that was only the beginning. Act 1. The object itself. Before we go beneath the ground, we need to understand what we're looking for. Because most people, if they're honest, know the Ark from one place. An adventure film, a warehouse, a melting face. That image is vivid. And it is almost entirely wrong. The real description is in Exodus, chapter 25. God gives Moses the blueprint on Mount Sinai. And it is precise in a way that should stop you. A chest of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, 1.5 cubits tall. That works out to roughly 4 feet by 2.5 feet by 2.5 feet. The size of a large trunk. Not a monument. Not a throne. A container, but not a plain one. Overlaid with pure gold, inside and out. A rim of gold around the top edge. 4 gold rings on the 4 corners, 2 on each side. 2 gold-covered poles threaded through those rings, so the Ark would never be carried by hand. No human being was to touch it directly. Ever. On top. The Kaporeth. Most Bibles translate this as mercy seat. The Hebrew is closer to covering, or atonement lid. A solid slab of pure gold. And rising from each end, a cherub. Not the round-faced infant of Renaissance painting. The Hebrew cherub was a composite creature. Human face, lion's body, eagle's wings, massive, terrifying. The same being Ezekiel described beside the throne of God. 2 of them, wings spread upward, facing each other, looking down at the lid between them. That space between the cherubim, that was where God said he would meet with Moses. There I will speak with you. Exodus 25 verse 22. The Ark was not a symbol of God's presence. It was the location of his presence. The most specific address in all of Scripture. Inside the Ark, 3 things. The stone tablets of the 10 Commandments. A jar of manna from the wilderness. Aaron's rod, the one that budded overnight to confirm his priesthood. The tablets of the law. The bread that sustained a nation for 40 years. The staff that proved God's chosen servant. 3 witnesses. Sealed inside. Carried through the wilderness for 40 years. Placed in the Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple. And then, silence. Now here is the detail that every serious scholar notices, but most popular accounts skip right past. The Babylonian Chronicles are extraordinarily thorough. They list the plunder of Jerusalem, the gold, The silver, the vessels, the priests, the captives, everything taken. Everything destroyed. The Ark of the Covenant is not on that list. Not mentioned, not claimed, not recorded. For a culture that cataloged conquest as carefully as the Babylonians did, that silence is not an accident. It is a clue. What happened next would surprise even the earliest scholars. Horich, the man who knew it was coming. His name was Jeremiah. And if you want to understand why the Ark disappeared, you have to understand this one man, in one specific decade, carrying a weight almost no human being has ever carried. Jeremiah began his ministry around 627 BC. That is 22 years before Babylon destroyed Jerusalem. 22 years of warning a nation that would not listen. He was not a popular man. He was thrown into a cistern. He was put in stocks in a public gate. He was imprisoned. His own family plotted against him. His own people called him a traitor for suggesting they surrender to Babylon rather than fight and die. He wept so much over what he saw coming that later generations gave him his own category. The Weeping Prophet, his Book of Laments, the Book of Lamentations, is one of the most devastating pieces of literature in the ancient world. But he was right. Every time. About everything. Now, in Jeremiah chapter 3, verse 16, he writes something that scholars have argued over for 25 centuries. In those days, when you multiply and increase in the land, declares the Lord, they will no longer say, the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. It will not come to mind, or be remembered, or missed. It will not be made again. Read that carefully. He doesn't say the Ark will be destroyed. He doesn't say the Ark will be captured. He says people will stop talking about it, stop thinking about it, stop missing it. And they will not make another one. That is the prophecy of a man who knows that the Ark is going somewhere. Not into enemy hands, not into fire. Somewhere from which it will not need to be replaced, because it will still exist. Now turn to 2 Maccabees, chapter 2, verses 4 through 8. This is the account that most people have never heard, written in the 2nd century BC. It describes an oral tradition older than the text itself. The prophet Jeremiah, warned by God of Jerusalem's coming destruction, took the tabernacle, the ark, and the altar of incense. He traveled to the mountain where Moses had gone to see the promised land, Mount Nebo, in what is today the nation of Jordan. And there, in a cave in that mountain, he placed them and sealed the entrance. Some of those who followed him tried to mark the path. They could not find it again. When Jeremiah heard this, he rebuked them. His words are among the most remarkable in all of ancient literature. The place is to remain unknown until God gathers his people together again and shows them mercy. Then the Lord will disclose these things, and the glory of the Lord will be seen. Read that one more time. The place is to remain unknown until God gathers his people together, until he shows them mercy. Then he will disclose it. It's not a story about a lost object. This is a story about a hidden one. Hidden on divine instruction. Hidden with a specific condition for its return. Hidden by the man who had spent his entire life delivering messages from God, and who clearly believed. This was one more message. Now hold that thought. Because the Talmud adds another layer entirely. The Babylonian Talmud, Tractate Yoma records a tradition from the rabbis that King Josiah, not Jeremiah, but Josiah, hid the ark. And the Talmud is specific about where. The chamber of the woodshed, beneath the temple floor itself. There is even a story. A priest working in the woodshed noticed one stone in the floor that looked different from the others. He went to tell his colleague. But before he could finish his sentence, he died. And the rabbis concluded that this was how they knew the ark was hidden there. The place was too holy, too sealed, too protected. One tradition says Mount Nebo. One says beneath the temple floor. These are not competing stories. They may be describing the same decision from two different witnesses, but there was one detail almost everyone overlooked. Act 3, the Copper Scroll. In 1952, 5 years after the first Dead Sea Scrolls were found in Cave 1 at Qumran, archaeologists opened Cave 3 and found something that did not belong. Every other Dead Sea Scroll was written on leather or papyrus. This one was written on copper, rolled into two scrolls. So old, so oxidized, that they had to be cut open with a saw. What was on it was not theology, not prophecy, not hymns. It was a list. 64 locations, each one described with enough geographic precision to navigate to it. And at each location, buried treasure, gold, silver, temple vessels, priestly garments. And in one entry, the text refers to the tabernacle of the Ark of the Covenant. The Copper Scroll is not fiction. The amounts it describes, calculated by scholars who have spent careers on it, total approximately 65 tons of silver and 26 tons of gold. At current values, that is billions of dollars. This is not the wishful inventory of a dreamer. This is an actual accounting. Most scholars now believe the Copper Scroll was written by temple priests shortly before or during the Babylonian siege. A record of what they hid and where, so it could be recovered when the crisis passed. The crisis never fully passed. The priests who wrote it may never have returned. Here is what makes the Copper Scroll relevant to 2026. Several of the 64 locations described in the scroll point to areas directly south of the Temple Mount. The City of David, underground caverns and tunnel systems that archaeologists have been exploring for decades. And it is precisely in this zone that archaeologist Chris McKinney has proposed the Ark may be concealed. In underground areas reachable from ancient tunnel networks that connected the temple complex to the city below. The pieces are lining up, not proving anything, but pointing, all of them, pointing in the same direction. At 4, Ethiopia and the Living Claim. There is one more tradition we cannot skip, because it is the only one that does not say the Ark is hidden. It says the Ark is present. Now, today, and has been for nearly 3,000 years, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church has maintained for centuries that the Ark of the Covenant rests in a small treasury chapel in the city of Axum in northern Ethiopia. The church is called the Cathedral of Our Lady, Mary of Zion. The treasury chapel beside it is guarded by a single monk. He is chosen for life. He never leaves the grounds. And no one else is ever permitted inside, not a president, not a patriarch, not an archaeologist. No one. The tradition goes back to the account of Menelik, son of King Solomon, and the Queen of Sheba. According to Ethiopian national tradition, preserved in a 14th century text called the Kebra Nagast, meaning Glory of Kings, Menelik traveled to Jerusalem as a young man to meet his father. Solomon received him with great honor. And when Menelik returned to Ethiopia, he brought the ark with him. Not stolen, entrusted. Given to a nation that would guard it in obscurity while Jerusalem burned. Now, is this true? Scholars are divided. The Kebra Nagast is a medieval text, not a contemporaneous historical record. There is no outside confirmation of Menelik's journey. And Solomon, who built the temple specifically to house the ark, seems an unlikely person to simply give it away. But here is what is historically undeniable. The Ethiopian Orthodox tradition is ancient. Their reverence for the ark is not a recent claim. It is woven into their national identity, their liturgy, their calendar, going back as far as records exist. And there is one detail about Axum that is never explained away easily. The Christians of Ethiopia use a replica of the ark, called a tabot, in every single church service. Every church in Ethiopia has one. Every liturgy involves it. The entire Christian practice of one of the oldest Christian nations on earth is built around the physical presence of this object in a way that no other tradition anywhere comes close to replicating. That is not invented. That is lived memory. Whether the object in Axum is the original ark or a very ancient replica is a question archaeology cannot currently answer. What is not in question is that a community of Christians has been guarding something for longer than most nations have existed. Act 5. The technology and what it found now. Let us come back to 2026. Because everything we have covered so far, the Babylon silence, Jeremiah, the Talmud, the Copper Scroll, Ethiopia, all of it has existed for a long time. Scholars have debated it for centuries. What is new is what the instruments are finding. Muon detectors. You may not be familiar with the name. The technology is worth understanding because it is extraordinary. When cosmic rays from space strike Earth's upper atmosphere, they produce a cascade of particles. Among these particles are muons, subatomic particles that travel at nearly the speed of light and pass through solid matter, the way X-rays pass through skin. Almost nothing stops them. But dense materials slow them slightly. And a void, an empty space, a chamber, a tunnel, shows up as an anomaly in the data. A shadow in the particle stream, precisely mapped to within a few meters, without breaking a single stone. This technology has already revealed hidden chambers inside the Egyptian pyramids. A previously unknown corridor inside the Great Pyramid of Giza was confirmed in 2023, using exactly this method. No excavation, no damage. Pure physics. In early 2026, research teams deployed similar technology in and around the Temple Mount area in Jerusalem. Advanced subsurface survey tools, including ground-penetrating radar, magnetometry, and 3D seismic mapping, identified anomalies beneath the ancient stone platforms. What they found was specific, rectilinear void spaces. That means rectangular empty chambers, not natural caves, which form in irregular shapes. rectangles, human geometry, sealed passageways, inconsistent with later Ottoman renovations, underground structures that do not appear in any known map or building record of the site. Something was deliberately sealed. Now, we need to be precise here, because precision matters, and because this story deserves to be told honestly. The technology does not confirm the presence of the Ark. It confirms something was there, something deliberately enclosed, something no later builder accounted for and no later builder disturbed. Archaeologist Chris McKinney, who has spent years studying the underground systems of the city of David, said this after reviewing the data. The findings support the possibility of underground networks that could have served as hiding places. That is a careful statement from a careful man. And it matters because it aligns with exactly what the ancient texts described. The Talmud said, beneath the woodshed floor. The copper scroll pointed to subterranean locations south of the Temple Mount. Jeremiah said, sealed, hidden, until the appointed time. And now the instruments say, sealed, hidden, rectangular, deliberate, 3,000 years of text, and 60 meters of modern physics, arriving at the same word, sealed. But there was one detail almost everyone overlooked. ACTH6. Why they cannot dig here is the part of this story that is never discussed enough. Because it is the part that makes the mystery not merely historical, but alive. Right now. This week, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem is one of the most contested pieces of land on earth. For Jews, it is the site of the first and second temples, the holiest location in Judaism, the place where Abraham offered Isaac, the place where the Shekinah glory of God rested between the cherubim. For Muslims, it is the Haram al-Sharif, he is the noble sanctuary, the third holiest site in Islam, the site of Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, home to one of the oldest and most magnificent structures on earth, and it is administered by the Islamic Waqf, a religious trust, which controls access and which does not permit archaeological excavation on the mount itself. This is not a bureaucratic technicality. It is a political, religious, and human reality. Any move toward excavation on the Temple Mount would be one of the most explosive acts in modern geopolitics. More than one war has started for less, and yet. In 1981, a group of Israeli rabbis began an unauthorized dig beneath the Temple Mount, working in secret for 18 months through a tunnel system connecting to the Western Wall. They were convinced, they were close, that another 18 months would take them to the chamber they were looking for. The Israeli government stopped them. Under intense pressure from the Muslim world, the tunnel was sealed. The rabbis were removed. That excavation has never resumed. What they found, or believed they found, has never been fully disclosed. The rabbis who led it are gone now. What they reported seeing inside those tunnels remains one of the most debated whispers in biblical archaeology. The instruments can see. The scholars can theorize. The ancient texts can point. And the ground, sealed by political reality, cannot be opened. Not yet. What happened next would surprise even the earliest scholars. Act 7 what Scripture actually says about the return. Let's come back to something Jeremiah said. Because in all the search for physical evidence, it is easy to miss the most important sentence. The place is to remain unknown until God gathers his people together and shows them mercy. Then the Lord will disclose these things. This is not archaeology. This is theology. And it changes the entire frame of the question. If Jeremiah was right, and his record of accuracy is extraordinary, then the ark is not hidden because of a human failure. It is hidden because of a divine timing. It is not lost. It is waiting. And its return is not dependent on the right technology. It is dependent on something else entirely. Now, Revelation chapter 11, verse 19. Then God's temple in heaven was opened, and within his temple was seen the ark of his covenant. And there came flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, an earthquake, and a severe hailstorm. The ark appears in heaven, in the temple of God in heaven. This is not metaphor in the context of Revelation. The entire structure of that book is built around literal heavenly realities. And what John sees at the opening of the heavenly temple is the ark. Some theologians read this as evidence that the earthly ark was always a copy, a shadow of the real thing that exists in the presence of God. Others read it as the ultimate moment of disclosure, the moment Jeremiah described, when God gathers his people and shows mercy and discloses what has been hidden. Both readings agree on one thing. The ark is not gone. It is present, in one realm or another, and its full disclosure is still ahead. Now, add one final source: the Copper Scroll. Entry after entry pointing to underground locations. And entry 64, the last one on the list. In the tunnel that is in the north, in the cave, a copy of this document with its explanations and their measurements and the detailed description of each. There is a second document, a key to the list of 64 hiding places, written by the same priests, buried somewhere and not yet found. Every thread in this story is unfinished. Every source points forward, even the ones written 2,000 years ago. But there was one detail almost everyone overlooked. Act 8, the human cost of the hiding. We have talked about texts, technology, traditions. But I want you to stop for a moment and think about the people. 586 BC, Jerusalem is burning. Not as a metaphor, as a fact. The city that David built, that Solomon filled with gold, that prophets had walked through for 400 years, is on fire. The priests who carried the ark knew exactly what was at stake. They had read the account of Uzzah, the man who reached out to steady the ark when it tipped, and died instantly on contact. They knew what this object was. They knew the weight of moving it. They knew what would happen if it fell into the hands of a people who did not know its holiness. Leviticus described what happened when the Philistines captured it generations earlier. Tumors, darkness, death. The Philistines sent it back on a cart with an offering, desperate to be rid of it. The Babylonians did not know any of this, and the priests knew that the Babylonians did not know. So these men, in a city burning around them, with Nebuchadnezzar's army at the walls, made a decision. They would not let it be taken. They would not let it be melted. They would not let it be displayed in a Babylonian temple as a trophy of a god who had failed. Whatever they did that night, whoever carried it, whoever sealed the stone above it, whoever walked away and said nothing, carried that secret to their death. That is not a footnote to archaeology. That is a human story. Men doing, at enormous cost, exactly what they believed God required of them, with no assurance they would live to see the outcome, with no expectation of recognition, with no knowledge of whether the thing they protected would ever be found again. There are people like that in every generation. They do the quiet thing, the faithful thing, the thing that costs them everything and is remembered by no one. Until one day, a Muon detector picks up a signal 30 meters below a sealed stone floor in a city those priests have been dead in for 2,600 years, and their faithfulness echoes. Act 9. What this means now. Let me bring this home. 'Cause this is not an ancient story with no present meaning. This is happening now. In 2026, the technology exists to see beneath the Temple Mount without touching it. The political reality prevents excavation. The ancient texts are more specific than ever before, when read alongside what the instruments are finding. And the condition Jeremiah named, when God gathers his people and shows them mercy, is a condition that millions of people believe is actively being fulfilled in the generation alive right now. The return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel after 2,000 years of diaspora is, for many scholars of prophecy, the single most significant fulfillment of biblical prediction in modern history. Ezekiel 36 and 37, Zechariah 8, Isaiah 11. These passages described a return. The return happened in 1948. In living memory, Jeremiah said the ark would remain hidden until the gathering. The gathering, by any biblical measure, has been underway for 78 years. This does not mean the ark will be found tomorrow. It does not mean the Dome of the Rock will be demolished. It does not mean political realities will dissolve overnight. But it does mean that we are living in the generation that is closest, by any historical measurement, to the conditions Jeremiah described. And in this exact generation, for the first time in human history, the technology to find it, without touching it, exists. That is not coincidence. That is not accident. That is something worth sitting with, quietly, for a long time. The instruments found a sealed chamber. Rectangular, deliberate, consistent with everything the ancient texts described. And the world, mostly, kept scrolling, but you stopped. You're still here. And that means something. 3 things. Before you go, first, the Babylon silence is not nothing. A civilization that recorded everything did not record the Ark. That is not an oversight. That is evidence. The most careful historians of the ancient world searched the temple and did not find it there to take. Something had already happened to it before they arrived. Second, Jeremiah 3:16 is one of the most overlooked verses in all of Scripture. He doesn't mourn the ark's loss. He prophesies that people will stop asking about it. that the question itself will fade. And then, at the appointed time, something will change. We are living in the generation that has seen the question come back with extraordinary force. That is worth noticing. And third, the priests who hid it were not extraordinary people. They were faithful ones. They did not know their decision would still matter. 2,600 years later, they just did what they believed was right in the moment they were given. That is the only kind of faithfulness any of us can offer. And it turns out, it is enough. It echoes through millennia. The Ark of the Covenant is either in a cave on Mount Nebo, sealed by Jeremiah on divine instruction, or it is in a treasury chapel in Axum, guarded by a monk who will die in that post. Or it is 30 meters beneath the Temple Mount, in a rectangular chamber that a Muon detector can see, but no human hand has touched in 2,500 years. Or it is in the heavenly temple where John saw it. Beyond reach. Beyond time. Waiting for a disclosure that is not ours to schedule. Any of these four answers is more extraordinary than the nothing that history's silence seemed to suggest. The Ark was never lost. It was waiting. And so, perhaps, are we? If this kind of depth is what you come here for, subscribe now. Every week, we go looking for what the surface doesn't show. Share this with someone who still believes the old questions have living answers. And tell me in the comments which of the four theories you believe, because that conversation is one I want to have with you. Then the Lord will disclose these things, and the glory of the Lord will be seen. 2 Maccabees 2:8, it was never lost.